One last question I had for you specifically on the men's actually was on Daniel Medvedev because he has had a very interesting year. If you look at his statistics for the year, it hasn't been a terrible year, but I think it's fair to say that towards the back end of this year, he's clearly growing quite frustrated with his form, with the conditions, with the balls, with the pace of court. I think he's also getting frustrated with the fact that certain opponents he's struggling to get past, like Carlos and Yannick. And you mentioned, of course, only the one win over Yannick when, I don't want to say he didn't deserve it, but obviously Yannick was ill during that. We saw him, kind of was throwing up on court as well. And against Carlos, he struggles and has struggled against him for a couple of years now as well. It seems like he's almost a little bit stuck in his career in knowing how to capture that second slam. Well, what do you think he needs to do, Steve, in the off-season to really challenge those guys? And maybe not specifically those guys, but actually start winning titles again, because he hasn't won a title since Rome last year. And yeah. I think one of the things you could say about him was that he always used to be a prolific title winner for the last few years, but that hasn't been the case in recent times.
No, that's one of the longest dry spells for a top player that I've ever seen. It's a very long time. You're not even at the midway point of 2023 and you don't win anymore. Now, at least following that Rome win, he had that really good U.S. Open, beating Carlos and losing to Novak in the final, and then pretty solid through the rest of the year, and then starts this year with that final against Sinner in Australia. But I feel like since then, even though we saw him, play okay on the hard courts in the spring and okay over the summer, no, he hasn't been the same guy. And everybody talks a lot about his shoulder. I don't know all the details there, just how serious the shoulder is. All I know is that the serve is not coming through for him nearly as efficiently and effectively as it once did. And I think people don't realize that as much as we admire the backboard in Medvedev and how willing he is to grind guys down and to take that return to serve from back near the fence and then start engaging you in these mammoth rallies, that he still needs those free points. And I don't think he's getting as many off that first serve, and I think that's worrying him too. And I think you sized it up well. There's a wider cast of players now that on the given day, they think they can beat him on a given day. So it isn't just the dilemma of Carlos and Yannick. It's a lot of other guys in the top 10, top 20 that won't beat him every time out, but will threaten him a lot and will beat him at least on occasion. And he knows that. I think he would accept that analysis. So therefore, the word stuck that you use is a very good one. He is a bit stuck right now. And here's a guy that's won a major and he's lost 5 finals at the slams. And now it's getting harder and harder for him to get back to the finals. I didn't think he gave a terribly good effort against Sinner at the U.S. Open in the quarters. They split sets and then it kind of got away from him. And my concern about him is also emotional in that he said before the year started he was going to try to, his goal was he wanted to sort of calm himself down a bit. The gist of what he was saying was he didn't want to have these explosions. He kind of knew that was sapping his own energy. It wasn't doing him any good. But he always reverts to it. It just keeps coming back. It just as soon as you think maybe it's gone, he implodes against somebody else. And I can understand the frustration because when we look at what he was doing there in that period from 19, well, you could even say 19 through 23, if you looked at it in its entirety. But what happened this year was discouraging. And in the end, Fritz passed him and ends the year at 4. It's not that big a deal to be 5 in the world, but the question I have is, can he really gain any ground? I suppose he could move up to 4 next year. To me, that's about the best case scenario. But there's a chance he slips a few more places if he doesn't find some kind of a formula now soon. And you said, what can he do? The what can he do part is he could try to play more like he did the first 2 sets against Sinner at the Australian Open final, where he's ultra aggressive. Because I thought he was incredibly consistent considering how much more he was going for in that match and still hardly missing. But the extra aggression was shortening some of the points and allowing him to force errors and create openings for winners that he normally wouldn't have. But I don't know if he can do that he tried to do a little bit out of the year-end championships. You know, it didn't work when he played Yannick there. I just felt like it was fleeting success with a more aggressive style. And I worry about him in the sense that I don't know if there's a way out of this. I mean, he certainly can have a good he can have a bunch more years where he might finish anywhere between 6 and 10 in the world and do good things. But is he ever going to get that second major? And how many more finals is he going to get to? Because Sinner and Alcaraz are going to beat him almost every time, in my view, almost every time. And then the danger is the others. And then Novak is still not gone. So the picture is not very bright. And I never thought I'd be saying these kinds of things about him based on what I observed from 19 through 23. But I think a lot has changed. And he's in a dilemma.